So hello and welcome to the video. A few weeks back I went on a 6-night cruise on the Celebrity Silhouette, a trip I covered in some detail in these videos, and I enjoyed it so much that I decided to go on another cruise. I seriously considered going back on the Celebrity Silhouette, but I decided that taking the same cruise on the same ship twice within 6 weeks was probably a little unimaginative. So instead I booked a 7-night cruise on Royal Caribbean's Anthem of the Seas. Throughout my YouTube career I have consistently made the same Caribbean joke, but as that word features 26 times in this script, it's going to get a bit old for both of us. So from here on in I'm going to refer to it as the Caribbean. Royal Caribbean and Celebrity are sister companies, so I expected the impact of the you-know-what to be consistent across both brands. But it wasn't. And of course the Royal Caribbean onboard experience is designed to be quite different from Celebrity's. This was my 5th cruise with Royal Caribbean, and for some years now I have considered them to be my favourite cruise line. But will they retain that coveted position at the end of this cruise? If you'd like to find out, stick around. Hi, I'm Matt. Over the last 25 years I've travelled a lot. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.3 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So subscribe to the channel so you can come with me. I made a video about what I consider to be the 6 differentiators of the Celebrity brand. That video did quite well and I enjoyed making it, so I'm doing the same about Royal Caribbean. I will keep that differentiator video very factual, and I will share more of my opinions on the Royal Caribbean experience in this video. Hopefully they will work together to give a rounded picture of Royal Caribbean and of what I thought of them. And as with my Celebrity cruises, I paid my own fare, and Royal Caribbean did not know that I was going to be making videos about the cruise. Whether they would have cared if they had known, well, that's another question. The pre-boarding requirements were very similar for both cruises. All over 18s needed to have been fully vaccinated, and all passengers needed to show a negative PCR result taken within 3 days of the cruise. That's 3 days, not 72 hours. So if you're due to board at 2 p.m. on a Sunday, you can take your test at any time the preceding Thursday. They have done a deal with a company called Eurofin, or perhaps that's Eurofins, I don't know, through which you will get a free test. But their locations are a little limiting, and if they aren't convenient for you, you are free to get a PCR test at a place of your choice, and Royal Caribbean will reimburse you $140 towards the cost. I went to a Boots pharmacy for my test. The lady who administered the torture didn't want me to film her doing it, which is absolutely fine, but she was very pleasant, very apologetic, and the whole experience is over in a few short minutes. Results were promised within 48 hours. Mine arrived after 48 hours and 4 minutes, which was a little nerve-shredding, as that ended up being only 22 hours before I was due to board. There is a Eurofin facility at the Southampton port, which I think is a last resort option if your test is lost or if it comes back inconclusive. A word about the reimbursement. Celebrity wanted you to submit a receipt and they then reimbursed you after it had been reviewed. Mine came through about 3 weeks after the cruise. Royal provided a $140 onboard credit regardless of the price you actually paid. If you didn't then use that onboard credit, it will be refunded to you at the end of the cruise. Mine actually came through on the day I disembarked, which is pretty efficient. $140 converts to about £104, so I actually made a profit on my PCR test as I'd only paid £85 at Boots. But Royal Caribbean has obviously decided it is cheaper for them to process a blanket refund rather than staff up a receipt inspection process. Although having said that, I did receive a call from Royal Caribbean the night before embarkation to check that I had in fact done a test, as I had not triggered my Eurofin voucher. I thought that was pretty good, and Royal Caribbean is obviously keen to avoid disappointment or confusion at the port. The boarding process was identical to Celebrity's. You download an app and upload into it certain information including your payment card and a photo for use by the security team. You then have to complete a health questionnaire through the app within 24 hours of boarding, you know, the usual sorts of questions that you get asked. And you also need to book an arrival time at the port, and this is designed to space out arrivals to prevent overcrowding in the terminal. If you park at the port, your cases will be whisked away from your car and you'll next see them outside your stateroom. You then need to go through a security check to enter the terminal, where they're looking for bombs and also for concealed alcohol because they think that will deprive them of revenue aboard. Inside the terminal, your vaccination record and test certificate are photographed. I went old school and printed them off to be super safe, although phone records were fine. Once they've asked if you need to update your health questionnaire, you're free to board. It took me about 16 minutes from car to ship, which is pretty good. Every adaptation arising from the pandemic improves the boarding experience, in my opinion, and I really hope all of these changes are retained when things get back to normal.
Thank you, Matthew.
Another pandemic-induced change concerns the safety drill. You now need to watch a video, which you can do through the app or in your stateroom, and you need to check in at your muster point with a member of staff. Completion is tracked via the app, and this is now a minor, brief inconvenience rather than being the significant, lengthy inconvenience that it used to be. And again, I really hope this practice is maintained when things return to normal. So you're on board and you're settled in. What else was different? Royal Caribbean was very focused on managing venue occupancies. Celebrity wasn't, not visibly at least. You needed to donk in and out of the Windjammer buffet with every visit, and you needed to reserve seats at all of the entertainment venues. Neither of these processes were in place on my celebrity cruise, not when I cruised at least. Royal Caribbean said that this was to ensure that capacity limits were adhered to, although it was never clear what those capacity limits were or whether anyone was monitoring them. There was also a compulsory hand wash before entering the buffet. Celebrity was happy with a squirt of hand sanitizer. I don't think anyone can complain about being required to maintain high standards of hygiene on a cruise ship, but being forced to do something always makes me a little rebellious. They'd then seat you rather than allowing you to seat yourselves, which, considering that no tables were set aside for social distancing, seemed like an unnecessary faff. Final comments on the buffet. Royal Caribbean has elected to close the buffet in the evenings, which I think is a pragmatic approach, given that there are plenty of other dining options available at that time of day. But I can see that it would irritate some people who don't enjoy the more formal dining options. And all food was served to you by crew rather than being available for you to self-serve. Talking about the crew, they have been seriously affected by this pandemic. Some of them had been aboard for 4 months without ever once having been able to set foot off the ship. I'm sure that would cause most of us to either mutiny or to find an axe and start swinging, but they knew the restrictions when they signed up, and the first group was actually allowed off the ship during my cruise, although they were only allowed off as far as the nearest supermarket. And although I hate to think it, let alone actually say it in a video, I think that this confinement was starting to affect the staff's enthusiasm for their jobs. There's also a reduced passenger count, 1,294 passengers on my cruise out of a capacity of 4,900. That reduces the tip pool, which means the staff are also earning less for the pleasure of being locked up on a ship thousands of miles from home. I can't criticise any of them as individuals, and I can't criticise Royal Caribbean for having to enforce these policies that are out of their control. But be aware that the relationship between passengers and crew has shifted subtly, and even small gestures of empathy were very, very well received. So let me complete my run through of changes arising from the pandemic, and with all of these it was exactly the same on the celebrity ship. There was no singing or dancing allowed amongst passengers, so there were no theme nights or sail-away parties. Lift capacity constraints were in place, no more than 4 people per lift. This was policed by the passengers themselves and was frequently ignored. And face masks were required when indoors, except when eating or drinking. Interestingly, the solarium area was considered to be outdoors by just about everyone. There was widespread non-compliance in the main theatre, despite pleas from the crew for us to wear our masks during performances. Unlike Celebrity a few weeks back, we were allowed off the ship into ports to travel independently, which was a very positive development. But unlike Celebrity, I didn't see any senior officers out and about during my cruise, and there was no captain or officer's reception. The crew tried very hard to release people from venues in a controlled manner to prevent congestion in public areas. And finally, in perhaps the most stringent interpretation of the rules, all books had been removed from the library. The library is really hard to find anyway, but if you take the trouble to do so, you'll end up disappointed. So that's probably enough about the you-know-what. So what about the ship itself and the experience? The ship is big. It is the 16th biggest ship afloat at 169,000 tonnes, and it's the biggest I've ever been on. With 1,300 passengers aboard, including 230 kids, it never felt busy, and you were always able to get a seat at the bar or a sun lounger wherever you wanted. The onboard experience would be radically different with 4 times as many passengers, and I frequently found myself wondering how challenging it would be to do what you wanted when the ship was full. When it is full, there is a real chance that you might not be able to see the shows that you wanted to see or to eat at the restaurant that you wanted to eat at, which would be extremely frustrating if you had paid a lot of money for the Royal Caribbean experience. And that is my conclusion about these bigger ships. They are designed to offer such a wide array of things to see and do that you shouldn't expect to see and do everything. After all, you wouldn't expect to see and do everything on your first visit to Las Vegas or Disney World. But that wasn't my expectation on boarding. Having cruised on smaller ships, including smaller Royal Caribbean ships, I've never struggled to see and do everything on offer. And I didn't enjoy being put under some pressure very early in the cruise to get my bookings in so that I would be able to see what I wanted. And even so, there were still a couple of shows that I didn't get to see. The other significant point is that the larger Royal Caribbean ships are designed very much with families in mind. A higher proportion of space is given over to kids and teen activities than I've seen on other ships, which is great if you're travelling with kids, but it gives proportionately less space for adult activities like bars and restaurants. There are fewer bars on the Anthem than there are on the Celebrity Silhouette, which has about half the passengers. But by devoting more space to activities, there are quite a few attractions. There was a flow rider, there was a skydiving simulator, there were dodgem cars, and there was the North Star aerial pod thingy. I didn't actually experience any of these firsthand myself, and I'll talk more about that in the differentiator video, but I did certainly enjoy watching others enjoy them. I'll talk more about the entertainment in that differentiators video, but I will repeat here that the quality of the entertainment was extremely high. The We Will Rock You show was superb, a little shorter than the West End version, but no less entertaining. All entertainers are now locked into long-term contracts aboard a single ship. Just like the crew, they have to do 2 weeks of quarantine when they board, and they are not allowed off the ship in ports. And they might only be performing for 2 hours a week. And I think that shows how keen these guys are to perform despite the restrictive conditions. And as I saw on the Celebrity recently, they seem to be as excited about performing as we were about seeing them. Quite remarkably, the cast of We Will Rock You included Kevin Kennedy, who is famous for having played the role of Curly in Coronation Street for 20 years. Either he really loves the We Will Rock You show, or he needs a new agent. There is a secondary performance venue aboard called the 270, and its feature show is called Spectra's Cabaret. This is a spectacle designed to take advantage of the superb technology that is available in that venue. It is spectacular, and I disliked it enormously. The storyline of the show was incoherent and it jumped around all over the place. 1 minute you're listening to pop hits and the next it's suddenly Indian music. It was just irritating. The volume was deafening, a criticism I had of I think all of the entertainment venues aboard the ship, and there were strobe effects that were actually really violent and were quite shocking. But it was spectacular and a lot of people did seem to enjoy it. So I promised not to duplicate the content of that other video, so I'll start to wrap things up, but there will be a lot more about the ship coming up soon. The experience was impacted by the pandemic, and I found that Royal Caribbean's interpretation of the guidance was stricter and more intrusive than Celebrity's had been. And somehow I felt more aware of what I was missing on Royal Caribbean than I had on Celebrity. But having said that, the core cruising experience is still intact. But the issue I had was what that core cruising experience means on a larger Royal Caribbean ship. As I'll explain in my other video, you feel more like you're in a resort that happens to be on a ship, rather than being on a ship that feels like a resort. And I concluded that I want a cruise to feel like a cruise, and I'm not sure that this one did. I've said before that there's no such thing as a bad cruise, just a badly chosen cruise, and I certainly had a good time on the Anthem of the Seas, but I'm not sure I would book it again, and I am sure that I would not book it if it was going to be full. I'd still like to experience one of Royal Caribbean's biggest ships, which are 50% bigger again than the Anthem of the Seas, but I will do so now with a much better expectation of what that experience will be like. And as the Royal Caribbean strategy is to operate more and more of these mega ships, I can't continue to hold them out as my favourite cruise line. That title does though stay within the Royal Caribbean group and moves across to Celebrity cruises, although there are still a fair number of brands that I haven't experienced that are eligible to take that title. I paid £933 for 7 nights single occupancy of a balcony cabin with still no single supplement being applied. I'll publish a cabin tour of my room in the next week or two. I then paid £335 to add the drinks package. That made this cruise quite a lot more expensive per night than my Celebrity cruise had been. So there you go. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it or if you got something from it. It really helps me out if you do so. Please leave me a comment because I would love to hear what you think about all of this. And as always, subscribe if you're new. So thanks for watching and I'll see you all again in the next one. Goodbye.